Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Canada once again for the first time in what feels like a good long while. And this is a little bit of a special review because this is going to be my first ever taste of a beer from the province of Alberta in the west of the country. So yeah, really looking forward to this. All of a sudden we got two Albertan craft beers through Systembolaget here in Sweden. So I bought both of them and you will see me review the other one in a few videos time. So keep your eyes peeled for that. For the first one though, we are going to go to the city of Calgary, which is in the kind of southwestern-ish part of the province. I actually thought Calgary was a little bit more kind of south and central before I checked the map again. But that, I guess, isn't such a big deal. But for this one, we are going to have a look at my first beer from Inner City Brewing. So this particular beer is called Sunnyside. It comes in at 5% ABV, and they're describing this one as an extra pale ale. But from what I can gather, this is basically an American-style pale ale, an APA, if you like. But yeah, certainly very curious to see how it turns out, and nice to feature an Albertan craft beer on the channel for the first time. So yeah, as I might have mentioned in a few other videos before, a few other Canadian videos, Calgary and Alberta generally, I guess, is a little bit special to me. My grandfather was a Spitfire pilot during the Second World War, and he actually trained to fly Spitfires in Medicine Hat in the southeast of Alberta. So yeah, he spent a lot of time in Calgary when he was over there. The only more fitting beer I guess we could have for my first Albertan craft beer review would have been something from Medicine Hat, but I think it's very unlikely that that would make it over here to Sweden. But yeah, he trained with the 33 CFTS Commonwealth Flight Training School in Medicine Hat, flying the Harvards and then the Spitfires as well before he went back over to Scotland to, you know, go on active duty and things like that. So yeah, pretty cool actually. Somewhere that I would love to visit. I would love to go and have a look at Medicine Hat and see the airfield where he flew and things like that, and of course to have a little look at Calgary and Edmonton and the various other places in Alberta, of course. But I've been to BC. That's probably the closest I've been actually. So yeah, I need to go and have a little look at Western Canada. I've never been to the east of Canada actually either, so I think a trip over there is well overdue at some point. But yeah, a special shout out in this video as well to one of my followers, Russ, or RP as he goes by on here. He's been following the channel for a good couple of years now actually, and the reason I chose this one for my first review as well from Alberta was that this is his hometown. So yeah, I always get comments from Russ from Calgary, which is pretty cool. So I thought it would be cool for him as well to do this as the first Albertan craft beer. But yeah, as I say, you'll see another one. The other brewery is from Edmonton, and that's a sour beer, so I'm looking forward to that too. But big shout out to Russ, who's been following the channel for quite a long time. A big shout out as well to the Canadian BeerTube contingent. There's quite a few guys over there reviewing beer. There's Lee Russell, who is actually one of the OG BeerTubers of all time actually. There's newer guys as well, like Redbeard, Off the 10th, Albino Rhino. There's quite a few Canadian reviewers these days, and I do apologise if I'm missing any of them out. I've been on a few live streams with some of them, but yeah, I'm feeling that I'm missing quite a few of them in that list there. But if you want to see Canadian beers more regularly, you can check out the likes of Lee Russell, Redbeard, Off the 10th, Albino Rhino. All of these guys are doing some pretty awesome reviews, so big love to them, and hopefully we can get them joining me on the channel for a stream again at some point soon. But yeah, introductions to Alberta done. Let's get cracking with this beer then and see how we get on. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Inner City Brewing. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Canadian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. Nowhere near as often as I would like, of course, but we need to see about some Canadian beer meals and things like that, and I'm sure we can figure that out in the future. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Inner City Brewing then. So as I've mentioned to you already, Inner City Brewing are based in Calgary in Alberta in the western part of Canada, and the company was founded back originally in 2016, but the two main men behind starting the company were Chris Nolan and David Bell, who were joined by a group of partners, and in total there are 5 owners of this brewery. So Chris originally studied geography and forestry, but later moved into management and marketing roles, and he was also an avid home brewer and won various medals both in his home province of Alberta and then across Canada. He was part of an organisation called Cowtown Yeast Wranglers, and eventually he won the top homebrewing award for the whole of Canada, which is pretty impressive. But he remained as the president and CEO of the company until July of 2020, but he now works for UPL, who are an Indian agricultural firm. Apparently he's a big agricultural nerd, but he loves craft beer as well. But yeah, he, from what I understand, is no longer actively involved with Inner City Brewing. David, on the other hand, is still active though. He came from a background as a petroleum engineer and then gradually moved into operations and management roles over time, and he currently serves as the company director and general manager, so you'll still find him in the brewery if you go and visit them. But the brewery is based in the Beltline district of the city, and this was actually, the building that they're in was actually once part of the Glenbow Museum, which is quite a big attraction there from what I understand. It was one of their storage facilities from what I can gather, but they put a lot of work into renovating this building into a brewery and tap room. The brewery operates a 20 BBL or 2,300 litre brewing system with a smaller 3 BBL or 480 Brewers Lab pilot system as well, so they can brew lots of different little batches of beer for the tap room, and the tap room itself has 24 different taps, and they opened to the public in late 2018. Over the years they've expanded their fermentation capacity a little bit, and I think they've added a few more lines into the tap room and things like that as well. But as of April 2021, when I am producing this review for you, these guys have produced around 120 different kinds of beer, according to Untappd. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Inner City Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, that's it. Let's get on to the tasting section of the video then. If you do have a good resource, incidentally, for Albertan or wider Canadian craft beer in terms of brewery information, do let me know about that in the comment section below, because I did find that this brewery was actually a little bit hard to research compared to some of the American ones and things like that. So yeah, do let me know if there are any good websites for researching the Canadian breweries, in fact. But yeah, I'll let you have a little look at the artwork of this one before we open it up. As you can see, it is quite nice and quite modern. I'm guessing that the sort of background here is like an oversight map of the city of Calgary. I'm guessing that's what this is. It looks very cool, actually. I thought that this was a little mark on the can, actually, the little black bits here, but I'm guessing it might be like waterways or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, I thought the can had been a little bit dinged or something on its way over here. But there you can see Inner City Brewing. They also have this symbol on the back of the can too. Yeah, Sunnyside Extra Pale Ale. I do wonder if this one is named. I wonder, it might well be named after something in Alberta, right enough, in the city of Calgary. But I wonder, whenever I see Sunnyside and it's associated with Canada, you always have to just think Trailer Park Boys. You really do. I love that. But yeah, as I said earlier, this one is a 5.1% American Pale Ale. It says on the back here quite clearly, brewed in downtown Calgary, and it says a tropical fruit layered over hints of pine, subdued malt, and a lightly silky body allow the hops to take centre stage. So yeah, this one, it does have its Swedish pant thing on the side there, which is good. It's a 473 milliliter can, 1 American pint, of course. But yeah, I think I paid roughly about 45 or 40, probably 40, I think, 40 Swedish kroners for this one. So yeah, that's roughly about €4. It's somewhere in the region of £3.75-ish sterling, and in terms of dollars, it's probably going to be about, yeah, it's going to be about maybe $5 American, something like that. So yeah, a little bit expensive, but you know, when you don't find Canadian beer all that often, yeah, you don't really care so much about that. The can is rock solid, so I'm just wondering how long it's been sitting for. Hopefully not too long, and hopefully it's still fresh. But like I say, 5.1% American style pale ale. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So yeah, didn't explode or anything when we opened it up, so I'm sure it will be alright. Let's get this guy out and into the glass then. My first ever taste of an Albertan craft beer. This is quite exciting. So yeah, looking at this. I'm wondering why they chose this particular beer in a brewery, because normally they would export like a stout, an imperial stout or something. But hopefully, as I say, hopefully this is the start of Canadian beer getting out there a little bit more, because you know when they're next to the States, it is a little bit difficult for the American breweries to get out there. Just checking that it's lined up so that my OCD is happy. But yeah, there we go. Can is nice and lined up. But yeah, as you can see, and as you would expect from a pale ale, this one has poured very nicely. You can see there is a solid finger of a bumpy, I would say, white head on this one. That's going to fade away quite quickly though and just leave a very thin foamy layer. You can tell that right away with this beer. But yeah, in terms of the colour, it's a lovely kind of bright, just very slightly amber yellow, this one. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, but overall it looks pretty nice actually. So yeah, kind of what you would expect from an American pale ale, to be honest with you. It has a little bit more of that kind of naturally hazy vibe to it rather than the big soupy gloopy sort of thing. So I'm not sure whether this beer will be a little bit more of a kind of New England or a more kind of West Coasty type pale ale, but I'm sure we'll be able to figure that out when we actually taste it. But you can see quite a few little bits of particle just floating around in suspension in this one. But yeah, lovely looking beer this, nothing out of the ordinary for an American style pale ale, we should say as well. So yeah, let's have a look at the aroma and see how we get on with this one then. Very curious about this. Ooh, that smells very nice. I think there's a bit of mosaic in this. There's just something about the aroma here is telling me there's a wee bit of mosaic in this beer. But yeah, I have to say it does smell very nice, and I think it's going to be quite a drinkable beer, this one. So fingers crossed it's good. But yeah, on the malty side of the aroma then, you can definitely smell straight away. We'll start with the malt as we always do. So on the malty side of things, you can smell there's a nice soft white bready base to this one, absolutely. It does have a little bit of that wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose, which I do like. You get one or two kind of more bread crusty elements out of the beer, which is interesting. I do wonder if there's a little bit of lager malt in this, because it has the crispness that you get out of the bread in this one is quite noticeable for sure. And I know that some breweries here in Sweden actually like to put, when they do pale ales and lighter beers like this, they do like to put a little bit of lager malt in them just to give them a bit of bite and a bit of you know, just a little bit of crispness actually. So I wonder if that's what's going on in here, because the bready notes, the sort of white bready elements you have in the base of this one do come across as just a little touch crisp. So there could well be a little bit of a lager or a pilsner malt or something in this. But yeah, white bready base, a little bit of bread crust, and you can get just a little touch of the wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose. But I would say that overall the wheat comes across as being quite smooth in a sense. So yeah, it's interesting. There's an element of sweetness to this one as well. You get some nice kind of there is a wee touch of a caramelly note to this one, if you like, but there's a lot of McVitie's digestive biscuit for me. I don't know how good a reference that is for Canadians. I'm sure you get McVitie's in the States. Actually, I'm sure I've seen those when I've been over in the States, and I think you probably get quite a, you know, Canada's got a little bit more of a stronger connection to Scotland and England and stuff like this, so probably a good chance you'll get them in Canada. But yeah, the aroma that you get in the malty side of things for me reminds me of McVitie's digestive biscuits, but it's got a sweeter caramelly element right in the middle of the nose, and you can smell it just gets a little bit more sort of grainy towards the edges of the nose, a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sweetness actually, which I really like. But yeah, the aroma out of this beer is very nice on the malty side of things. I think a lot of people underestimate the importance of having a good malt base in your beers. So yeah, I think this one has a really nice balance to it, and it just gives the impression it's going to be a nice, crisp, drinkable beer. That's what you want from a pale ale. It is essentially a slightly more hoppy session beer, if you like. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of this beer then, it certainly delivers there too. But on the hoppy side of things, I think this one's got a little bit of mosaic in it. There's just something very, very familiar about it. It could be a little bit mosaic and maybe a wee touch of something else. But yeah, I'll say that though and I'll be wrong. That's the thing. I always used to like playing Guess the Hops in beers, but it's quite difficult now because there's more and more new hops coming out of all these different farms across the world. But yeah, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one. There's a good little bit of floral aromaticity to the beer. I wouldn't say the bitterness in this one and the sort of big floral notes, you don't get too much bitterness on the aroma, but you can definitely pick up a nice bright floral grassy component to the beer as well. It's definitely grassy more on the front of the nose, and then on the sides, if you like, it's a little bit more kind of floral. I wouldn't describe it as being overly spicy, and it doesn't give the impression of a great bitterness like I mentioned a second ago, but yeah, green component is well balanced as well with the malty side of things. So yeah, I really can appreciate that about this beer. So yeah, on the fruity side of things then, I think that covers the green component quite well. On the fruity side of things, you've got a lovely light kind of tangerine orangey note out of this one. There's a bit of pineapple in there as well, a few tropical notes, maybe a bit of mango and apricot. So could this just be a straight up Citra? It could be a little bit of a Citra and Mosaic kind of thing that's going on here, or Simcoe and Mosaic. It might be something like that, but there's something that comes across that's very familiar with this beer, so I'm tempted to say it's Citra and Mosaic that might be in this one. It didn't say on the Untappd or the website, but you've got that lovely juicy sort of tangerine note, which is making me think Mosaic, and there's a bit of pineapple in there as well, which again makes me think Mosaic. The little touch of earthiness also I think is a sign of Mosaic, but there's also a wee bit of tropical note in there too, and a wee touch of citrusiness, which is making me wonder about Citra, because Citra gives you that juicy kind of mangoey component, a bit of apricot and stuff like this, and then you also just get a wee bit of a kind of lemon limey character too, which again is a sign of Citra. So yeah, I wonder about that. There's something just very familiar about this one. So yeah, this seems like as well that it might be one of their kind of more flagship beers, and it would make sense to use, you know, hops that are produced on quite a large scale for something like this. So yeah, seems there's a lot of that's familiar about this beer. It comes across as a nice, crisp and very drinkable pale ale from the aroma. So definitely take a little bit of time to ponder over the aroma before you taste the beer. As I always say, that's half the experience with craft beers, but let's get stuck into this one now and see how we get on. So yeah, this beer is the Sunnyside, an extra pale ale as they were calling it, a 5%er, although I guess it's more of an APA, from Inner City Brewing in Calgary in Alberta over in Canada. My first taste of an Albertan craft beer. So yeah, big shout out to all the veterans of 33 CFSTS, if I remember the abbreviation correctly, and a big shout out to Russ as well and the other Canadian beer tubers. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty solid, you know. When it's a pale ale, of course, you don't expect it to be like a kind of earth-shattering beer and things, but you want them just to be nice and drinkable. And the other thing that I'm impressed with is that it's still in pretty solid condition, actually. So it's obviously been well cared for on its journey over here. So yeah, quite happy with that. Definitely, it's maybe not quite as bitter as it might have been in its early days, but it still has held up quite well. And it comes across as pretty solid. So no bad things to say about this beer. Definitely not. So yeah, first taste of an Albertan craft beer has gone down pretty well. Let's see if we can get the rest of it in the glass. I think it'll all fit. There we go. There we go. That's a nice pour, actually. Line it up once again for the OCD. There we go. But yeah, it's everything that you'd expect from an American pale ale. It gives you everything that you'd want. As I say though, I'm guessing that the brewery will have kind of crazier and more exciting beers, but as an introduction to the brewery, I think this gives a good impression. It's just a nice, zestable, drinkable beer, this. So I think when I do make it out to Alberta, I will need to go and check out Inner City Brewing. Absolutely. But yeah, where to start with breaking down the flavour of this beer then? So straight away across the kind of middle third of your palate, you can feel that nice, soft, white bready character there. That just blankets the middle of your tongue, and that forms the backbone of the beer. As you go further into the aftertaste, you get a few more kind of bread crusty elements coming out of it, which I think is very, very nice. But yeah, smooth, kind of yeah, definitely a smooth sort of bread crusty element to the beer on either side of the kind of central part of your palate. But yeah, the backbone of the beer is a soft, fresh, white bready character there. There is definitely an element of crispness to it, like I was picking up in the aroma too. So I think there's a wee bit of lager malt in this beer. And the malt base is quite straight shooting as well. It's not overly complicated. So yeah, middle third of your palate then. Smooth, white bready backbone, gets a little bit of crispness in there. Either side of that middle third of your palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of bread crusty note and a wee touch of graininess there. But sitting on top of that soft, white bready character On the back half of that middle third of your tongue, you can feel a little bit of a kind of lager malty type crispness to this one. And as I've said to you before, when it comes to the likes of lager malt and pilsner malt, it can be a bit annoying to describe that as a flavour because it really gives you more of a kind of vibe about the beer, if that makes sense. So yeah, I can certainly appreciate that with this one. But yeah, you do get a nice, it does actually get a little bit drier the further you go into the aftertaste as well. So yeah, back half of that middle third of your palate does have a bit of a kind of lager malty crispness and dryness to it, which is definitely quite interesting. But yeah, in the dead centre of your palate, you've got a nice little circle there, and that's a sort of sweet, kind of almost honey-like type quality there. But if you go into the very, very dead centre of your palate though, you get quite a concentrated caramel, and as you move further out from that, it just gets a little touch more kind of biscuity in a sense, and then as you move right towards the edge, the very edges of your palate, you start to get a more kind of grainy element out of the beer, which I can really appreciate. So yeah, the malty base in this one, it's quite straight shooting in a lot of ways. White bread, a little bit of a lager malty kind of quality, I suspect, sweet caramel and a bit of biscuit. You don't really need anything else from a pale ale, to be honest with you. I think that works. But yeah, on the back third of the palate then, on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a more kind of bready element coming to the beer. It just builds up and it feels a little bit more doughy, slightly more concentrated, grainy bread crusty note there. Then the back third of your palate, you get a nice sort of smooth, wheaty element to it. But at the very, very back of the tongue, it's certainly got a little bit more of a wheaty, bitey element to it. And sitting on top of that back third of the palate, you definitely get a little bit more of a kind of taller, yeasty kind of quality coming out of the beer. You can feel the flavour on that back third of your palate is quite tall, and as you move further forward, it kind of condenses down a little bit. It condenses down quite a little bit, and then you can feel that as you move into that middle third of your tongue, it is quite condensed, and the flavours are quite kind of almost squashed together in a sense. So I can really appreciate how that goes together. I like that about this beer. The malty side of things works really nicely in this beer. So yeah, malty side of this one is pretty solid, and it's straight shooting, but that is what you expect from a pale ale. There's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, I think we can move on to the hoppy side of the beer then. The malty side gives you everything that you want. On the back corners of the palate then, you do get a little touch of earthiness out of this one, and this is another clue for me that it's mosaic that's involved in this beer somehow. But as you move further forward, it develops a little bit of a kind of herbally quality, but as you progressively move forward towards the kind of front corners of your palate, it develops more of a kind of floral aromaticity to it. This beer is not crazy in terms of bitterness, but we'll come back to that in the mouthfeel. But it does develop a little bit of there is a wee tiny touch of spiciness on the kind of front corners of your palate. You also have to remember that with a hop forward beer like this, the bitterness is going to kind of drop away as the beer gets a bit older. This has come from Canada, so you have to bear that in mind with this one too. Round the front curve of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of a lighter sort of grassy element to the beer too, which I really like, and it has a wee touch of zestiness in there also, which I can certainly appreciate. So yeah, that goes together quite nicely in this beer as well. So green component goes with the sort of slight brightness and stuff you get with the green component goes well together with the it goes well together with the sort of crispness that you have in the malt base here. But yeah, it works very, very nicely. So in terms of the fruity side of the beer then, I think we've covered the green component and the malty backbone quite nicely. Onto the fruity side of things then. So yeah, on the front third of your palate then, as I always say, on that border region between middle third and front third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a slightly doughy, bready build up. Then the base of that front third of your palate has a little bit of a more kind of bready, grainy element to it. So that for me, the front third of the palate, the base feels just a little bit more grainy in a sense. So yeah, bread crusty elements in there, which kind of suits it in honesty. But as I always say, on that front third of your palate, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a wee bit of a slight kind of passion fruity note to this one. This makes me think Citra is involved. So yeah, there's a nice little bit of a kind of stronger Citra, a sort of passion fruity element there. And as you move further forward from that, there's a good little bit of a kind of more oily mango as you move further forward. You get a few undertones of a kind of, you do get a little bit of an apricot note in there as well, in fairness, but yeah, a little bit of a stronger passion fruit at the back, more kind of oily mango as you go further forward, and a wee touch of a kind of apricot-y thing in there as well. So yeah, interesting how that kind of pans out. So the tropical side of the beer for me, I'm pretty sure there's a bit of Citra in this one, to be quite honest with you. But then as you move on to the front half of that front third of your tongue, you get the more oily, citrusy elements out of the beer. You get a lovely kind of oily tangerine note, and for me, again, that seems to be a sign of mosaic. But as you move right towards the tip of the tongue, you get a little bit of a sort of lemon limey thing, and that is most likely to be from Citra, I would say, as well. So yeah, your orangey tangerine notes I think are coming from the mosaic, and I think the tropical notes you're getting in this one are coming from Citra. That would be my bet on this one. I think this is a Citra mosaic pale ale, but you know, there's a few other hops. It could be a little bit Simcoe or something like this, but yeah, Citra and mosaic would be the two that I would guess in this one. I'll say that though, and I will be wrong. Playing guess the hops is a little bit more difficult these days than it used to be with everything that's out there. So yeah, I like how this goes together though. It's a solid beer, this one. Very nice. The other thing, you know, it could be Amarillo that's in this one, but I think Amarillo doesn't have the earthiness, and it's a little bit more oily than mosaic is in a sense too. So I'm more tempted to say mosaic than Amarillo for the orangey side of things. El Dorado, of course, could be a substitute for the Citra, but El Dorado is not that common a hop to use. There's lots of different things you could actually use for this. But yeah, I think this is a Citra and mosaic pale ale, this one, but it certainly works out really nicely. It gives you everything that you want, the style. So this beer gets a thumbs up from me. As I say, probably not the most exciting and crazy beer you're going to find from this brewery, but as an introduction and as a sessionable beer, it gives you what you want. And I thought, you know, it's just cool to have, for me, it's just cool to have an Alberta beer to review for you here on the channel. So that's why we got this one. But yeah, I think that rounds off the kind of flavour part of the video. Let's round off the tasting section with the mouthfeel then. So I would say that this beer is pretty mid-bodied. It's right in the middle of the spectrum. So yeah, carbonation is pretty smooth in this one. Don't think we can really say too much more about that. It's smooth carbonation, sort of mid-bodied, and it works. It's got a little bit of slickness to it, this beer, but it's also got a good little bit of smoothness. It's almost like stylistically, this beer kind of straddles the line a little bit between a New England and a West Coaster. It's got a little bit more of that sort of bready, biscuity West Coast vibe, because remember, West Coasters, in my opinion, can be sort of bready and biscuity, or they can be really oily and caramelly, and it sort of straddles that line, but you get a little touch of the kind of New England smoothness out of this beer for sure. So I can certainly appreciate that about this one for sure as well. But I like that. Yeah, it's a sort of New England West Coasty hybrid, this one, in honesty. But in terms of bitterness, this beer does have a little bit more of a West Coasty level bitterness to it. I think this might be about 50 or 60 IBUs, something like that. Remember though, the IBU count is one of my weaker points of beer review, and I'd be tempted to say 50 IBUs for this. It does feel a little bit stronger than the standard 30, and again, you know, with the age of this beer, some of that's probably dropped off. But yeah, nice little bit of hoppy bitterness there. Middle third of your palate's got a nice smoothness underneath. As I say, you do get a little bit of sweetness, and that develops the further you go into the aftertaste, and the fruits for me are just a little touch kind of juicy as well. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's a solid pale ale, this one, and you know, you don't buy a pale ale to kind of blow the head off you. You buy it to be a nice, solid, drinkable beer, and this one delivers on that. So you can't ask for much more from it. Thumbs up to Inner City Brewing. I do hope that I can try, you know, like a New England double and a West Coast double and an Imperial Stout or something from these guys. I think it would be cool to try some of their more kind of punchy beers in a sense. So hopefully, as I say, we can get to Calgary at some stage and have a little look at that. But yeah, that's all I can really say about this beer for the moment. Impressed with this one, and it certainly makes me curious to try my other Alberta beer and some more from this brewery. So yeah, let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Inner City Brewing. Always interesting to hear more about these. Let me know some of the other Calgary breweries and some of the other Alberta breweries that I should be keeping an eye out for as well. And hopefully I can find a Canadian beer mule at some point to supplement all the European ones that I've garnered over the years. But yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, and I hope I'll see you guys on another review soon. This one was the Sunnyside Extra Pale Ale, an American Pale Ale 5% ABV, 5.1% ABV, sorry, from Inner City Brewing Company in Calgary in Alberta over in the west of Canada. My very first Albertan craft beer review for you here on the channel. Slàinte, skull, cheers, and see you very soon.